Strange enough, for a 12-year-old Irish boy, I had a really keen interest in Asian cuisine. And my grandmother gave me this fantastic encyclopedia of Asian cookery, and I spent my teens cooking through it. Most people were out kicking a football. I was making all sorts of different dishes, and I loved doing it because it was, you know, the excitement of playing around with ingredients that certainly weren't in my mum's kitchen growing up. You know, it was fish pie, it was bolognese, it was, you know, Irish stew. There certainly was no soy sauce, there was no rice wine vinegar, and, you know, ingredients like that. And so for me, you know, Asian cuisine was like a moment to explore, and I loved that. With my spicy steak supper, it's all about marrying a really good piece of meat with Asian store-cupboard ingredients that you're bound to have in the kitchen, some fresh veggies, and it all comes together as this beautiful marriage made in heaven that delivers you the perfect dinner. If you get really good quality steak, there's very little you need to do with it. And this is a good example of a recipe that does just that. I have strip loin steaks, and they've been sitting out just to come to room temperature so that they're gonna cook beautifully. You're gonna get a gorgeous crisp on the outside, but you're gonna keep it nice and blushing on the interior. To this, a little bit of sesame oil. All you need is about a teaspoon's amount, and the nutty flavor you get from this, the really strong scent in the kitchen, is what this is all about. So just brush that all over the steak. I'm using a griddle pan specifically because of the deep char you get with them. It's those grooves that are going to give you the smoky flavor that's essential to this really gorgeous steak salad. A little pinch of black pepper. There's not too much spice here, bar the chili that we're going to add later, so I just want a pinch of black pepper and kind of just layer up the flavor, layer up the seasoning as we go along here. So the way to know that your pan is good to go is to hold your hand over it, and at the point at which it's no longer tolerable, that's how you know your pan is nice and hot. If you put your steak in too early, it's just going to sweat and you're not going to get those deep char marks. And let's get those steaks in. If you don't hear a sizzle as you add the steaks, you need to wait. This is where you need to take your time. Do not get in there, do not start poking and moving this steak. Leave it to sit, and it's going to need to sit for about 2 to 3 minutes, just until you get those deep char marks, and it's cooked almost half the way through. Now, while that's cooking, let's talk about our salad dressing / marinade. Now, it might seem a bit strange to be making the marinade after the steak has hit the pan, but this is sort of a reverse sear marinade, which is going to give you really electric flavor that's injected to the steak as it rests. Now, the great thing about this being a sort of just-in-the-door recipe is that while the steaks are cooking, you're kind of getting everything ready to go, and it can all come together pretty much in about 10 or 15 minutes. Steaks are smelling pretty good, and a good way to know that they need to be turned is they kind of, it starts to come up the sides that it's almost halfway cooked, and you should have really gorgeous char marks. I mean, that is where there is flavor. Turn that over and just look at that. They're literally only going to need a minute or two more. So back to our marinade, a nice fine chop on 2 very small bird's eye chilies. Now these pack a punch, there's some serious heat in these, so if you want to go one, by all means, slow it down and reduce the heat if you wish. So that's our fresh aromatics. Next in is some dark brown sugar, soy sauce, and to balance it out, a little bit of rice wine vinegar. If you don't have rice wine vinegar, use something like apple cider vinegar, or a clear vinegar will do the job just nicely. And to balance it all out, a little drop more of sesame oil. And always important at this point in the game to make sure that you taste it, because again, like I said, you can follow this in a recipe, but when you're in the kitchen and you're cooking yourself, it's only you that can decide the end flavor of this. Lovely. Steaks are looking good at this point, marinade is ready to rock, and now we just need to get our steaks out and rested. This is where we need to involve a little bit of that dressing. So I'm going to put about half of this mix over the steaks. And I'm also, once these are sliced up, we're gonna pop it straight back into the pan and cover it and coat it in that dressing again. So leave these aside. And while they're resting, we need to talk about the other veggies involved here. We've got some spring onions, some sweet corn, and some carrots. And we're gonna make up a sort of a charred sweet corn salad to go alongside this. So another little drizzle of some sesame oil over our spring onions, and then just a tiny touch to coat the sweet corn as well. So once they're completely coated, straight onto that searing hot pan and give them a good press. And the same goes for the spring onions. Just tumble them in. Now while the heat finds those spring onions and the corn, I'm just gonna slice up our carrots. And I have two little utensils that are very handy for this sort of thing. One is your regular old vegetable peeler, and the other is a julienne peeler. And the julienne peeler is gonna ensure that you get lovely little thin strands on your carrot here. Now, while you're doing this, it's all about kind of keeping an eye on what's happening in the kitchen. The spring onions are pretty much good to go. You'll notice that as a recipe goes, we're constantly in action. You're constantly moving and you're checking as you go. And the great thing is that kind of as the time that steak has rested, you should be left with a really great salad. So it's a perfect just in the door method. And now our corn is done, so I'm gonna leave that to rest. Our work here is done on the pan. And we're gonna take up that steak and slice it really thinly because I want thin little slivers running through the spring onions, running through the carrot and that corn. That for me is the perfect way to cook steak. Beautiful thin slivers, but we do not want to forget about all that gorgeous marinade and the meat juices. So straight back in. Just give it a good mix through so that cut surface of the meat takes on all the flavor and soaks it up. Right, time for the corn. It's the sweetness here, it's the smokiness here that you're gonna get really, really different flavor to this salad. Now, this is fresh corn that I'm using, but even if you can only get canned sweet corn, drain it off and pop it into a smoking hot pan, and you'll still give it some serious smoky flavor. So it's always worth adding. Making a bit of a mess in the kitchen, but some things never change. Don't forget about the reserve dressing, that goes straight in. And then just give it a good toss and a mix through. I think it needs, if I have some toasted sesame seeds. If you have these, they're a great addition in here, and you don't need to add too much. So onto the plate with lots and lots of that gorgeous salad. They're all great elements. Beautifully cooked steak, that really interesting salad. And then you just bring them together on the plate. Wow. There's just great flavor going on here. It's the textures, it's the saltiness, it's the sweetness, the spiciness, and it's all right here in this dish in 15 minutes flat. A perfect just in the door dinner. It'll have you going back for seconds.
For us, I don't think we'd get through the week if we didn't have recipes like these. They are absolutely essential to actually getting us dinner to the table. So I encourage you, I implore you, if you've seen anything you like, give them a go, because if you can incorporate those sorts of recipes into your weekly habits, it just makes life a bit easier. And I can tell you, as a stressed out dad at 2, it definitely makes my life easier.